Envoy of Lights presents Lopsided Minds, Part 3, Beyond Matter. Written and spoken by Dr. Sean Shamaradian.
In the name of the omnipotent, omnipresent, omnibenevolent, omnitemporal, and omniscient God, the most merciful, the most gracious, and the most compassionate, the eminence, the proprietor of patient, space, time, and beyond, the fiduciary, the adjudicator, custodian, and the high judge, the umpire of all there is and the non-existence, the holder of the truth, justice, and equity in the name of the Almighty God. The existence of matter does not eliminate the possibility of a marvelous deity. Instead, it demands it. To say the universe is nothing but atoms, it is like believing a book is nothing but ink. They ignore the intelligence, the creativity behind the order, nor cause for order, intelligence, or design, or any purpose was given by the atomist, forgetting that atoms dance in exquisite laws, yet the laws themselves have no weight, no shape, no atoms behind their arrangement, no author behind the thoughts writing the book of life. Atoms are entirely space. Every atom has a tiny nucleus, extremely dense, about 100,000.00 times smaller than the atom. A cloud of electrons occupies almost the entire atom's size. Therefore, 99.999999999999996% of atoms are wholly space. How is it that we are still full? It involves a complex process in which electrons repel one another. The nucleus is tiny compared to the electron cloud. The forces that act between electrons as nuclei, together with quantum rules, make matter rigid, heavy, and challenging to push through. Those forces are what your hand actually feels. Therefore, when two atoms approach, their electron clouds repel one another because electrons occupy orbital region with negative charge. That electromagnetism repulsion prevents atoms from interpenetrating under ordinary pressure. What one feels when touching something is the electromagnetic force transmitted from atom to atom. Quantum mechanics and the Pauli exclusion principle. Electrons are quantum particles that cannot occupy the same quantum state. The Pauli exclusion principle means you cannot just shove electrons from many atoms into the same small set of states. That creates a quantum pressure that resists compression and gives atoms a definite size. This is fundamental to the existence of matter's volume. Chemical bonds are interatomic forces. Atoms stick together as a solid through chemical bonds. These bonds arrange atoms into a rigid lattice or network that transmits forces throughout the material. That network provides the structure that resists deformation. Feeling full and solid is how sensory perception engages the skin's nerve endings, which detect mechanical forces and pressure on the skin cells. When one's hand presses an object, the outer electron clouds of the atoms in the skin repel the electrons of the object's surface, and nerves sense the resulting pressure or contact. One's brain interprets those signals as solid, heavy, full, etc. The subjective feeling of solidity caused by force transmission, not by the absence/presence of literal matter in a tiny volume. Bottom line, believing in neither a divine creator nor an intelligent atom is not very smart. How historical atomists like Leucippus, Democritus, Epicurus, and the rest fed ignorance into contemporary materialists, the modern atheist, is mind-boggling. How can some so-called professors, scientists, and philosophers fall into the trap of atomists' notion? If there were a God, he would be made of atoms. In the meantime, believing that atoms are not intelligent. This statement is absolutely contradictory, since the creator of heaven and earth is omnipotent, omnipresent, omnitemporal, omnibenevolent, and omniscient, infinitely intelligent, telling you how incredulous, unbelieving, the atomists were in their assessment of the universe and beyond. The atomists at the time of their doctrine were utterly unaware of the infinitely imprecise rules of the quantum world. They were irrelevant to the possibility of laws and situation in quantum physics. Strange things in the quantum world indicate the supernatural or the metaphysical. Manifestation, wave-particle duality, every particle, electron, photon, even large molecules, behaves both as a solid and a wave at the same time. It depends on how you measure it. Quantum superposition, a particle can exist in multiple states or locations simultaneously until it is measured. For example, an electron is not here or there. It is here and there. Quantum entanglement. Two particles can become linked so that changing one instantly changes the other, affects the other, even light years apart. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. Quantum tunneling. Particles can pass through barriers that they should not be able to cross according to classical physics, like walking through walls. This is what powers nuclear fusion in stars. The observer effect, the mere act of observing a quantum system, changes it. When you measure a particle's position, you destroy its wave-like function. Collapse of the wave function. Before measurement, a particle exists in many possible states. Measurement forces the wave into one definite reality. The uncertainty principle. You can never know the position and the momentum of a particle with perfect accuracy. The more precisely you know one, the less you know the others. Quantum fluctuation. Space is not empty. Particles pop in and out of existence from the vacuum itself. They are called virtual particles, contrary to the atomist view of an empty void. Quantum zero-point energy. Even at absolute zero, particles still vibrate with energy. Nothing in the universe can ever be completely motionless. Quantum zero effect. By repeatedly observing a particle, you can freeze its evolution, preventing it from changing. State. In quantum mechanics or quantum state, a watched pot never boils. Non-locality. Quantum interactions can occur without any known physical connection. Reality appears to be linked beyond space and time. It says activities can happen outside space and time. Still, the non-believers persist in their ignorance. The strange thing is that if you could somehow collapse all the atoms in the human body, squeezing out all the space between electrons and the nuclei, what you get is nuclear density matter, the physical estimate that the entire human race, 8 billion plus people, could be compressed into a sugar cube but weighing billions of tons. You cannot compress people like that because electrons resist compression, Pauli exclusion principle. Thus, this statement is theoretically correct but not practically feasible. Everything you see, including your body, my body, every object you observe is built from structures that are almost entirely space. A whole human being would shrink to smaller than a grain of dust. Delayed choice experiment. A measurement made now can determine what a particle did in the past. It is as if the universe waits to decide history until someone looks. Quantum eraser. If information about a particle's path is erased, the interference pattern returns, as if the particle remembers being a wave. Vacuum entanglement. Even the quantum vacuum holds entanglement fluctuation linking distant regions of space. Energy quantization. Atoms absorb and emit energy only in discrete energy levels or distance-packed quanta, not in between allowed values. Pauli exclusion principle. Identical particles, such as electrons, cannot occupy the same quantum state. Quantum spin. Particles have a spin, which is not physical rotation, but a mysterious intrinsic property, meaning that spin always yields distance values such as up or down, superabsorption and superradiance. Collections of quantum particles can absorb or emit light more efficiently than their parts. Entanglement swapping. Two particles can become entangled even if they never interact directly with each other. They can do it via a third party, weak measurement, weak values. You can make a gentle measurement that does not fully collapse the wave function. These bizarre, odd, and eccentric-like particles are appearing outside their allowed regions. The symmetric quantum mechanics. Some quantum theories suggest that the future influences the past. Both initial and final condition may determine reality. Macroscopic quantum states. Large objects, superconductors, superfluids, Bose-Einstein condensates, etc. It can behave as a single quantum wave, billions of atoms acting like one particle. Quantum indistinguishability. Two identical quantum particles are literally indistinguishable. Even in principle, they lack individual identities. Quantum randomness. Quantum outcomes are inherently random, not unknown, truly unpredictable in principle. That is what we think, perhaps absolutely meaningful in their unpredictability. Probability wave. Particles are not objects. They are probabilities spread in space. Reality itself is a mathematical probability until it is measured. Quantum teleportation. Information about a quantum state can be transmitted to another instantly via entanglement. This is a fundamental principle of quantum communication. Quantum non-cloning. You cannot make a perfect copy of an arbitrary quantum state. The universe forbids perfect duplication. In the quantum world, nothing is what it seems. Particles wander between being and non-being. Beings split themselves across the universe and whisper to each other from galaxies apart. A glance can freeze time. A choice today can rewrite yesterday, and a space boil with ghosts that flickers in and out of existence. Here, reality is not solid. It's a shimmering probability collapsing into truth only when we dare to look. If that is what science is telling us, as inconceivable and complex the universe is, working through strange particles, that even science cannot be clear about why and often how things are done, in the invisible domain, which is the actual reason for the material world, then the atheists have lost their wisdom to lean on science, replacing the Almighty God. Wave-particle duality. Particles, electrons, photons, etc., behave as both waves and particles. Double-slit experiments show an interference pattern when not observed, but a particle-like impact when measured. Superposition. A quantum system can exist in multiple states at the same time. An electron does not occupy a single location. It has a spread of possible locations. Entanglement. Two particles become correlated so strongly that measuring one instantaneously determines the state of the other regardless of the distance. This correlation violates classical independence. Quantum tunneling. Particles can penetrate energy barriers due to wave-like behavior. This is essential for nuclear fusion, alpha decay, and modern electronics. Observer effect. Measurement disturbs the system and selects a definite outcome from many possible states. After observation, one reality. Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Position and momentum cannot be simultaneously known with infinite precision. This is not a limitation of the instrument. It is a property of nature. Zero-point effect. Frequent observation prevents a quantum state from evolving. Constant measurement freezes changes. Delayed choice experiments. Your decision to measure a particle's path after it has passed, the slit determines whether it acts like a wave in the past. Quantum eraser. Erasing which path information restores wave interference as though the particle retroactively regains its wave nature. Non-local quantum effects cannot be explained by signals traveling within space-time, and correlations exceed classical limits. Bell's theorem. Energy quantization. The energy levels of atoms and molecules are discrete. Electrons jump between levels by absorbing or emitting quanta. Quantum spin, an intrinsic form of angular momentum with no classical analog, measured only in discrete orientations, quantum teleportation. A quantum state can be transferred across a distance via entanglement with the physical transfer of a particle. Quantum randomness. The quantum state of specific measurements is fundamentally unpredictable. Superconductivity, macroscopic, and fluidity. Macroscopic quantum states allow electrons or fluids to flow through resistance. Philosophical version, provocative and powerful. Particles do not behave independently. They remain mysteriously connected across the universe. Reality is not a collection of things. It is a collection of possibilities. The universe at this level is restless. The vacuum itself trembles. Particles appear, vanish, and reappear as flickers of pure energy. Matter flows through barriers. Time slips, time bonds, and sometimes seems reversed. Yet this strange, ghostly world is the foundation, the underlying of the material domain we live in. Other strange apparatus in the universe. Every atom in your body participates in this cosmic puzzling apparatus. While every atom is 99.99999999996% empty, we feel full and substantiated. To understand quantum physics is not only to comprehend matter and energy, but it is also to know the limits of certainty, the system of existence, and the fragile boundary between the seen and the unseen. This is the hidden architecture of reality. If you shrink yourself down to the most minor scales of being, you enter a world unlike anything you have ever imagined, a world where the laws of logic dissolve and the ordinary becomes impossible. Here, the particles remain stationary. They exist in every allowed place. They do not travel one path. They explore all paths. The quantum world is a territory where logic bends, where a particle can be in two places at once, where space is full of activity, saturated with information, where looking at something changes what you see, where two particles light years away behave as one. Nothing behaves as expected. Atoms do not orbit like planets. Light is not just a wave or a particle. It is both. Possibilities and not certainties govern everything. Quantum non-locality dissolves the notion of distance. Superposition challenges our beliefs about singular identity. The collapse of the wave function reveals the intimate marriage between consciousness and existence. Here, cause and effect lose their sovereignty. Time becomes flexible. The universe behaves like a machine and more like a thought in the mind of something infinite and great. Quantum physics is the universe confessing its greatest secret. Reality is not a solid structure. It is a negotiation between being and awareness. A particle is not an object, but possibilities. A measurement is not a discovery, but a creation. The observer is not separate from the observed, but they are two halves of one phenomenon. Atoms are composed of subatomic particles whose vibrational frequencies are allocated to boundless things, from animated to inanimate beings, and they are also in different shapes. But their shapes are not like solid balls. They are defined by the probabilistic cloud of their electrons, orbitals, which vary from spherical for simple atoms like hydrogen, s orbital, to more complex directional shapes, p, d, f orbitals for heavier elements. Even the atomic nucleus itself can be deformed, elongated, or flattened. If the subatomic particles are senseless, as atomists claimed, they roam around, traveling aimlessly in the void. How can hardware for artificial intelligence composed of subatomic particles be intelligent? The algorithms, data, software are abstract concepts. The physical components that enable it are composed of atoms, which in turn are composed of subatomic particles that are not insulating but are highly conductive and intelligent. If they were senseless, they could not mimic human intelligence or similar capabilities. Advanced language model, smart TV, smartphone, internet, digital computer, computer vision, robotics, GPT, GPS, quantum computing, biotechnology, genetic engineering, space technology, microchips, bioprinters, automation, nanotechnology, medical breakthroughs like MRI, ultrasound, EEG, CT scan, smart prosthetic, biolimbs, DNA, satellites, ultraviolet light, antibiotics, penicillin, an infinite number of other decisively bright things, making our lives much easier and highly productive. They are composed of awakened subatomic bits as we take them for granted. The observer effect. It is so potent that by looking alone, one is understood to change the very instance of existence being watched. Heisenberg first proposed it within quantum theory. Philosophically, the observer effect challenges our perception of a fixed reality, as it depends on the act of witnessing by a conscious observer or a measurement device, transferring potentials into actualization, moving the observer effect from the passive viewer to an active participant, co-creator. Implying our consciousness fundamentally shapes the atmosphere or the experience of the universe, turning objective existence into a participatory process where interpretation defines being. Consciousness as creator, instead of an objective world existing independently. Some philosophers suggest that conscious observation does not just reveal reality, but brings it into being. It constitutes it, collapsing possibilities like a wave into a definite state of being a particle. Subjectivity over objectivity. The classical notion of a world pre-existing observation is inverted. The atmosphere of our experiential world is a product of our interpretive act, granting observers profound personal agency to shape their reality by altering their beliefs. Interconnectedness, it dissolves the strict boundary between mind, observer, and matter, observed, positing a unified field in which consciousness and the physical universe are deeply connected, thereby challenging materialism. In essence, the observer effect implies that the atmosphere we experience isn't merely out there to be passively perceived. It is dynamically co-created through the very act of our attention, transforming perception into participation. What happens in the black hole time-wise compared to our time? The time difference near the black holes is extreme due to gravitational time dilation, meaning time slows significantly as one approaches the event horizon. Hours near the hole could be months or even billions of years on Earth, depending on the distance. In general relativity, massive objects warp space-time, causing time to slow down in stronger gravitational fields. In the quantum domain, why, when one leaves something at a fixed place, does it move to another location? In quantum physics, particles do not shift location randomly. They exist as a wave function, probability wave, that spreads out, indicating that they have the potential to be in multiple locations simultaneously until measurement is a concept of superposition, where the act of observation or measurement forces the wave function to collapse into a single definite location, exposing just one scenario, one possibility out of many. Starting with the sophist philosophy, sophistry did not have a single view on God. Some sophists were agnostic. For example, Protagoras. We cannot know. Protagoras stated that, concerning the gods, I have no means of knowing whether they exist or not, or what they are like, because of the obscurity of the subject and the brevity of human life. Some were atheists, such as Digoras, while others were religious or used religion for social good, but they commonly focused on human-centered knowledge and morality, frequently being skeptical and questioning divine explanations of human affairs. They were more concerned with human success, rhetoric, and worldly matters, such that morality and truth could be relative or human-made rather than divine decreed. Atheism, figures such as Diagoras of Milos and Theodorus openly denied the existence of gods, leading to trouble in Athens. Skepticism toward the traditional gods. Many sophists questioned the human-like, often capricious, nature of the Olympian gods, emphasizing human reason and the polis, human-centered focus. Their philosophy emphasized practical success, rhetoric, and the comprehension of human affairs, shifting focus from the divine causation to human agency and convention. Subjectivism, the idea that man is the measure of all things, Protagoras, implied that religious truths, like other truths, could be subjective, not absolute divine facts. You could tell that existentialism was influenced by subjectivist views of people like Protagoras, since it believed in man, the individual, as the centripetal force of nature gravitating towards man's success via his own effort. Traditionalism, others, such as Hippias, held that traditional views regarded gods as the source of laws, yet even then the emphasis was on human interpretation and utility. In essence, The Sophists challenged traditional religious certainties, promoting a relativistic, human-centered perspective. Some behaved as atheists or agnostics, while others employed skepticism to teach persuasive skills. The primary criticism of sophistry is that it prioritizes persuasive power and personal gain over the pursuit of objective truth. Originating in ancient Greece, this negative view was given mainly by philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, since what mattered? It is not what is true, but what can be made convincing. This means a false argument could be defended as well as a true one. The stronger speaker, not the accurate idea, wins. Globally, many schools of thought and prominent attorneys were influenced by such a notion, aiming to win regardless of the truth or falsehoods. Plato and Aristotle believed that this indecent strategy reduces philosophy to manipulation rather than to the pursuit of truth. In defense, many sophists argued that moral laws are human conventions rather than objective realities. Protagoras famously said, "Man is the measure of all things." That justice, goodness, and virtue vary by opinion. No universal moral standard exists. However, this undermines ethical norms, accountability, and justice. Sophists claimed that they could teach virtue like a technique: speak well, appear virtuous, and gain power. But virtue became appearance rather than moral integrity, and ethics became performance. Socrates objected that virtue demands wisdom and self-knowledge, not rhetorical tricks and cunning behaviors. Exploitation for money. Sophists charged high fees and often taught whatever they thought would help students win in court or in politics. It was not about the truth or justice that they cared about. This raised suspicion that ideas were tailored to clients. Philosophy became a market commodity as it is cultivated today. Socrates, by contrast, taught freely and questioned motives. Erosion of rational inquiry. Sophists relied on emotional appeal, clever wordplay, ambiguity, and paradox, rather than logical consistency, evidence-based reasoning. Aristotle's critique, a sophistry imitates wisdom but lacks genuine understanding, the appearance of knowledge without reality. Political and social harm. Sophists empowered the speakers to manipulate public opinion. Rhetoric could override truth in courts and other assemblies. They contributed to demagoguery, mob persuasion, and poor political decisions. Plato blamed this culture that was advocated by the sophists for Socrates' execution, who was murdered by a false decision of the court, not by due process of the law. Sophistry ultimately failed because it lacked a commitment to truth. Reduced philosophy to technique could not ground ethics, justice, or knowledge. Plato, Aristotle, and later Western philosophy shifted towards objective truth, logical reasoning, and moral realism. Essentially, Sophism failed because it taught people how to win arguments rather than how to discover truth, turning wisdom into a tool of power rather than understanding. They were indifferent to moral laws, since the core of justice and fairness was lost in their assessment of reality. They were irrelevant to facts, to the truth. Skepticism, philosophy. Skepticism is a tradition that questions the possibility of specific knowledge, urging doubt and inquiry into beliefs, often by challenging the authority of reason, and with ancient roots in Pyrrho, 4th century BCE, and modern developments through Descartes' evil demon, ultimately asking how we can honestly know anything. It ranges from doubting specific claims, for example, moral or religious claims, to radical global skepticism, which questions all knowledge and advocates suspending judgment as a path to tranquility. A skepticism uses doubt not only as an attitude, but also as a test of the foundations of knowledge, demanding strong evidence. It is central to epistemology, the study of knowledge, in that it questions what we can know and how we know it. Ancient skepticism, Pyrrhonian, advocates suspending judgment on all matters as appearances are unreliable. It serves as a check against accepting beliefs without sufficient evidence, thereby prompting deeper critical reflection and challenging dogmatism. Cartesian skepticism. Descartes used radical doubt, evil demon, brain in a vat, to find indubitable knowledge, famously concluding, "I think, therefore I am, cogito ergo sum." It stands at the core of the question of whether humans can attain specific or absolute knowledge. It urges caution: do not accept claims without sufficient justification. They inquire, "How do you know?" And "could you be mistaken?" They question causation, induction, the self, and even the reliability of sense perception. Modern skepticism, which references methodological doubt, René Descartes, and David Hume. It exposes dogmatism and unquestioning belief. It sharpens reasoning and demands justification. It helps give rise to modern science by rejecting unquestioned authorities and perhaps eliminating superstition. Bottom line, the skeptics argue that there is insufficient evidence to justify belief in God. The problem with skepticism is that many things we rationally, cogently believe in are not empirically possible. The standard is rarely consistently applicable. The existence of other minds is not empirically possible. The reality of the past, the universe, how can one experience the cosmos or the universe? Moral truth, the uniformity of nature is what science utterly depends on. The subconscious mind, the consciousness, the quantum world, the environment's impact on our senses enables life. The impact of our senses on the nervous system, the spine and the brain, including the prefrontal cortex. The precise functioning of the trillions of cells in our bodies depends on approximately 100 billion neurons and synapses that connect them, of which about 30 trillion are awake cells. Males have higher cell counts with approximately 36 trillion cells, whereas females average approximately 28 trillion cells, according to the National Institute of General Medical Sciences. As our minds advance, we validate the science of guided evolution, eliminate stupidity and ignorance, and move away from illusion, detached from nonsensical births and deliveries, enabling people to see what is right and what is wrong. As progressive minds identified flaws, while superstitious beliefs were rejected and corrupt notions denied. Detecting any theory or doctrines that are empty of merit and not prudent, as they are often clueless, not relevant to the facts. Moreover, we know that without thoughts, intelligence, memories, feelings, and emotions, without mind and the subconscious mind, one does not exist as a human being. It is not an exaggeration to say the body is dead without the mind. But what are these human qualities, these extremely valuable products made of? Here is what science testifies, that thoughts are not made of anything in the way physical objects are made of matter. But again, how does anything exist without being made of anything? If mind and thoughts are not made of anything, then the mystery that remains, me, you, and billions of others, should not exist, should not be able to function consciously, aware, or exist but as vegetables. It is not a lie that without mind, thoughts, and memory, feelings, and emotions, nothing exists, at least not as a human being. Science correctly holds that thoughts are not substance. However, many neurologists and scientists, including physicists, believe that thoughts are neurochemical activities, whereas chemicals are substances. This is an oxymoron, like saying living dead or sharp dull. There is a conflict or a flaw here that science does not want to see. A thought is an event of meaning, not a thing. You cannot weigh a thought, you cannot locate a thought, you cannot divide it into parts. Yet it has content, intent, truth, and value. The thought of justice matters is not sodium, dopamine, or electricity. Those may accompany the thought, but they are not the thought itself. Thoughts are intentional realities. They are about representation, information, and content. No chemical reaction means I miss my friends or my family. No electrical signal equates the claim this is unjust, and so on. Science has no choice but to vote for the spirit, the soul inside, even if science cannot tear the soul apart in scientific laboratories, or is helpless to do an autopsy on a thought or a mind. This is the conundrum, the dilemma facing science. Physicists are only comfortable experiencing things they can perceive with their senses, the very senses they cannot observe or materialize. From a neuroscience view, thoughts and memories correlate with brain activity. Neurons fire, synapses strengthen or weaken, and networks reorganize. Neurochemicals modulate, moderate, and attune these processes, but correlation or attuning is not identity. Saying thoughts are brain activity is like saying music is the vibration of strings. The vibration is necessary, but music is not made of wood and metal. Moreover, it requires a musician to play the strings, for example, on a guitar or a harp. It is not a mystery that an expert musician and finely tuned instruments are necessary for a rather pleasant and impressive symphony or delightful music. So scientifically, the brain is the instrument, thoughts and memories are patterns being played. Patterns are real, but they are not a material substance. Memories are not neurons, chemicals, electric impulses, or physical objects stored like files in a drawer. No scientist has ever isolated a thought, an idea, a belief, a memory. Instead, memories are distributed, dynamic, and reconstructed rather than static. Thoughts and memories are best understood as information, meaning, plus awareness, crucially, information matters. Meaning is not chemical. Awareness is not electrical. The thoughts are expressed through matter, but not reduced to matter. The subconscious mind influences decisions, stores memories, shapes emotions, dreams, and experiences, and can travel to other realms, including the realm of the dead. Among many different phenomena, it operates without the conscious mind, yet it has no shape, no color, no weight, no physical location you can point to. Approximately 95% of our decision and brain activity are driven by unconscious deliberation encompassing habits, emotions, biases, and automatic function and choices. It acts, decides, prefers, and remembers. This tells us something imperative. Causation does not require material substance. If thoughts emerge from matter, why is it not identical to it? The brain is a receiver. The mind is the agent, a translator, a mediator, or an interface. Memories exist as non-material realities, expressed through neural patterns. It explains the concepts of the self, meaning, free will, personal identity, a moral compass, and responsibility. Hardware brain, software mind, and user self. Thoughts, memories, and the subconscious mind exist, act, cause, effects, carry meaning, and are known directly by experience. Still, they do not matter, are not reducible to objects, and are not reducible to chemistry. They belong to a different category of reality. The essential truth is that we are not bodies that accidentally think, but thinkers who temporarily inhabit bodies. Strangely, the common denominator is that the non-believers grasp how the human brain functions as a mechanical product, a physical machine, devoid of a spirit, since they assert that the mind is an attribute of a soulless being. When we cannot stop crying in the face of a tragic situation, neurochemistry is involved, but it is not the first cause. It is the mechanism, not the origin. There is a chain reaction moving from cause to chemistry to tears. The trigger, the factual initiator of something meaningful, is perceived, such as loss, grief, humiliation, rejection, and not belonging, overwhelming relief, empathy or deep memory, inner conflict or moral pain. The cause is psychological and experimental, not chemical. It is translated by conscious awareness and emotional meaning, cognitive emotional appraisal. The mind evaluates the event. This matters deeply, such as, I cannot resolve this. I am overwhelmed. The evaluation, the appraisal, occurs before chemistry changes. Two people can face the same event and react differently. Proof that chemistry alone is not the driver. Once meaning is assigned, the brain's emotional center activates amygdala for emotional intensity, threat, and loss, hippocampus, memory and personal context, prefrontal cortex, loss of regulation or control. Neurochemical cascade, the mechanism. Only now do neurochemical surges happen. Cortisol, referencing a stress. Adrenaline, bodily arousal, fight or flight scenarios. Serotonin fluctuation, emotional instability. Oxytocin, social pain and attachment distress, or the love hormone. Endorphins are released during crying to numb pain. These chemicals or hormones do not decide to cry. They execute the response once the meaning has been registered. Yet even then, assuming that they remain unknown, irrelevant, and insensitively oriented, but how do they respond adequately to the urgencies and to the emotional distress? How do they detect sad or agonized feelings? First, they communicate electrically, then chemically. But how do neurons know the exact amount of chemicals or hormones to secrete? And what causes this? Furthermore, the autonomic nervous system also activates. Throat tightens, breathing becomes irregular, facial muscles contract, tear glands are stimulated. This results in involuntary crying, sometimes uncontrollable. Crying cannot be stopped due to emotional conflict is unresolved. The meaning remains active in awareness, in memory. The nervous system cannot return to baseline. The chemistry continues because the meaning continues. If crying were purely chemical, all humans would cry identically. Drugs alone would fully control grief. Meaning, memory, and consciousness would be irrelevant and out of place. Neurochemicals are responders, not authors. They obey, meaning they do not create it. We cry because a conscious, meaningful experience overwhelms our capacity to regulate it. Neurochemistry drives the body's response. Relief after crying is not accidental.
This has been Lopsided Minds, a production of Envoy of Lights. The journey continues. In Part 4, The Silent Architect